Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Hey, thanks again for joining us here at Faith in Your Recovery. We're excited for today's program. We're glad you're with us, and we know you're going to walk away from here with a fuller heart than you entered with. You're going to walk away from here with some new tools, thoughts, ideas. Our goal, as we take every time, is to share all things recovery. And as we do that, we want to bring you hope, and we want to help you to take the next right step. So hang with us, stay in the battle, hear what we've got to say. Our guest today comes to us from Central Florida. Yeah, sorry, Indiana folks. Just like Dorothy, Indiana's not Kansas, all right? Indiana's not Florida. But Joe, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Randy. I appreciate it.
Well, we look forward to this. We've spoken a couple of times over the phone, maybe done a little emailing, but this is the first time to be able to talk with you, and I'm excited about that. It's a challenge to be able to dig into your heart and hopefully pull out something that will even surprise you in the story and bring hope and help to those folks who are listening, who are having their own battles with substance use disorder, addiction, whatever the label may be.
Yeah.
So we're going to begin this whole thing. Let's go back. Let's share with our folks that backstory, kind of that BC, before Christ time, okay? And tell us what early life was like. I know you were really a stalwart and loved playing baseball and all, as I recall from things I've read. So Tell us about life and your friends, your experiences, and what took you down that dark hole.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in Wilmington, Delaware, so I wasn't always in Florida. I was born in Wilmington, Delaware, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's a small city right outside of Philadelphia, probably about 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia, and my parents divorced when I was 6 years old. My mom pretty much, she didn't really want to stop partying. My parents used to party and stuff. They hung out with the rough crowd, used to have a lot of biker friends. And my mom just kind of didn't want to stop partying after I was born. Now, my dad, on the other side, once I was born, he quit smoking cigarettes. He quit drinking like that. He quit partying. He quit it all. It's like we brought this life into this world, and it's pretty much it's time to grow up. And my dad always wanted to raise me to the best of his ability. So when my mom, didn't really want to stop partying like that, he gave her the ultimatum, and they ended up getting divorced when I was 6 years old. And my dad took me to live with his parents, my grandparents, in a nicer section of town.
Same area, just a different section.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my grandparents were old school, man. Church every Sunday, dinner at 4:30, and each day of the week was like a set meal. We knew what we were having on each day of the week, And like I said, man, they were very old school. They were very traditional. And my dad, like I said, he just wanted to give me the best upbringing possible. And in that household, there was structure. There was love. My grandparents were the glue that held the family together. you know.
Often the case.
Every Sunday, the whole family got together. We would have a big Sunday meal. Um, we celebrated every birthday together. You know, summer vacations down at the beach together. Every holiday, people were coming over to the house, and it was just like I said, they were the glue that held the family together.
Sure.
Very traditional, very loving. Um, and my dad, you know, there's something that he told me from a very early age, and it was whatever you do, whatever you choose to do in life, in all that you do it to the best of your ability, right? No half measures. And that really stuck with me. That really stuck with me. I think by the time I was 7 years old, I was practicing t-ball out in the backyard. And then I was practicing that every day. And then when I was 8 years old, we went to go try out for t-ball. And this, like 2 minutes into the tryout, they're like, "This kid's no, he can't play t-ball. We have to put him into little league because he's too good for t-ball." And man, I carried that, like, those set of morals, like, with me. I practiced baseball day in and day out. I loved baseball, and I always practiced until I was one of the best kids on the team. And each year, we would go to the championships and stuff like that. And I had the same group of friends from the age of 6 all the way through high school. And we were just your regular neighborhood kids. Like I said, it was a good neighborhood. It was a nicer part of town. So, some days we would be out in the street playing hockey. Some days we would be down the street playing basketball or playing home run derby. We would just do normal stuff. We didn't get into trouble. I think the most we might have ever done was around Halloween time. They have mischief night, and we would go out and we would kind of egg people's houses or play doorbell ditch. That was the extent of our rebellion. We were good kids, man. We were all good kids. We all got good grades in school. We didn't get into trouble.
Not a great deal of vandalism. Not
No,
in that. Yeah.
no,
And,
yeah,
and that closeness with the community friends, the neighborhood. I think it's something that a lot of kids miss today. We're inside using our thumbs for everything we do with some sort of machine, be it a game box of some type or whatever it is. But the life lessons that we get from being with others are unmatched.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I'm sorry. Baseball led to skateboarding. As we played little league, and we're getting older. We're going into middle school now, and I see all these kids in middle school. They like skateboarding, so I start to pick up the sport, and I start practicing skateboarding. And man, I would practice every day after school. Soon as I got home, I'd throw my book bag in the house, and I'd run out, and I'm skateboarding. I'm practicing tricks, practicing. And we formed this little skate crew, the kids in the neighborhood. And on the weekends, we would go downtown and we would skateboard. And, it was just such a good time. The sense of camaraderie, it was amazing. And, I practiced until I was the best kid in the neighborhood. And then I practiced until I was, the best kid in the city. And then next thing you know, I got sponsored, and I'm skateboarding in competitions and things like that, going to different states, and it was really fun. It was really fun. But it just goes back to that thing, whatever you choose to do, do it to the best of your ability. And that was no different. And obviously, I'm still playing baseball as well at the time. And I remember one day after baseball practice, I went over to my friend's house to skateboard, but I noticed he had an electric guitar. And I'm listening to this kid shred on the guitar, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, this is so cool. And I remember coming home and just like, man, I was so excited to tell my dad. I'm like, I want a guitar. Please give me a guitar. And he was like, well, you're still young. Um, this might be a phase, right? I was 12 years old, and he said, I'll tell you what. If your 13th birthday comes around and you still want a guitar, I'll get you a guitar for your 13th birthday. And sure enough, my birthday came around and we were at that guitar store. And he got me a baby blue electric guitar. I'll never forget it. It was called a Bentley. It was a knockoff. Looked like a Fender. But we got back to my grandparents' house, and Randy, the second my fingers hit that fretboard, like something inside of me came alive. Like
You were home.
I've never felt such a sense of joy and excitement in my life. You know, I loved skateboarding. I loved playing baseball, you know, but this guitar, something about it. And I didn't know what the heck to do. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know how to play a single song. But I loved it. I was just so infatuated with it. And like I said, the sense of joy and excitement that it brought to my life, it was truly amazing. And I think because it was a spiritual gift from God. Now, at that time, I had no idea. You know,
Sure.
I just knew it felt great. You know, I had no idea that it would later on in life become my calling and my purpose.
Exactly.
But that's later down the road, you know. Right now, I'm just a 13-year-old kid. I sat on the hardwood floor of my grandparents' dining room from about 4 in the afternoon until it was past midnight, and my dad had to come in and literally like, okay, son, it's time to put the guitar down and go to bed. It'll be here in the morning when you wake up, I promise, you know.
So who was your, let me interrupt, please. Who was your first guitar hero? Yeah, who was it that just really grabbed your head and heart with their style and abilities?
Man, I really loved Slash from Guns N' Roses.
Okay.
I really loved Slash from Guns N' Roses. I liked Kirk Hammett from Metallica. I loved Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. I love Jimi Hendrix as well. Man, my influences were all over the place. You know, and my musical taste was everything from heavy metal to hip hop and everything in between. You know, but those were just a few to name
Sure.
some. But I just, man, I practiced that guitar every day. My dad eventually seen how much that I loved it, so he got me signed up for some guitar lessons, and I started taking guitar lessons. And you know, I took guitar lessons for the rest of middle school, going into high school, going into like ninth grade.
So a couple of years worth, are we talking here? 2 or 3 years worth of lessons?
I think it was almost 4 years, like three
Okay.
or 4 years worth. And
Okay.
I learned a lot of music theory, a lot of the scales, and I learned how to read music. I also learned how to read tablature, which is a different form of music. If you don't know, it's done by numbers. And it got to the point where my teacher had to tell my dad, like, listen, I feel like I'm just taking your money at this point because I've taught your son everything that I know. And not only has he retained it, but he plays it better than I do. And
you Maybe he should be doing the class kind of thing.
So yeah, that was that. I'm still in high school at this point. Um, Still playing baseball. I'm still skateboarding, and I'm still playing the guitar. Life is great. I'm getting good grades. Not getting into any trouble or anything like that at this point. Um, the relationship I had with my father at this time was the best that I could have ever imagined. You know,
Your dad must have been a special man. I hear how he committed to you. Sorry about the breakup and the issues there, but he obviously gave some sage advice and was truly in your corner during those years.
and I'll tell you, my dad was my best friend. He was my best friend. He put everything aside to give me the best life that I could have, that I could have ever wanted, you know?
Yeah.
And yes, I had my relationship with my friends, but man, my dad, man, we would go down the street, we'd play basketball together, we would play baseball together. On Friday nights, we would go to the batting cages together, we'd go to the movies together, we would go golfing together, and our biggest thing was fishing. My dad loves fishing. So every weekend we were taking different trips and we were going fishing every weekend. And like I said, he put everything aside to give me the best life that he could give me. And he was like my best friend, you know. So much to the point where it got to the point where I think I was like 15 years old. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 15 years old now, like, and I literally haven't ever even seen you go on a date. I'm okay now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay. Like, you need to live your life. You need to go out and, like, meet somebody or, you know? Um, so a couple months later after that conversation, I'm over at a friend's house skateboarding, and I noticed this, like, emerald green Corvette out front of his house. Man, it's so nice, dude. It was pristine. And I'm like, that Corvette is awesome. I'm like, whose Corvette is that? And he said, oh, it's my mom's hairdresser. She's getting her hair done tonight. And I was like, oh, man, that's cool. So we go inside the house, and I see this lady, and she's doing my friend's hair. And next thing you know, I start talking with my mom, or with my friend's mom. And we kind of play matchmaker. Because
Good.
she was single, you know, and I knew my dad was single, so we kind of played matchmaker, set him up on a date, and things just kind of, you know, they took off. They hit it off, and I remember it wasn't even a year later, my dad asked my permission if he could marry her. You know, that's the type of relationship that we had. You know,
Respect from both sides.
yep. And that was that, man. They got married. We moved in, and obviously I'm in a different part of town now. I'm not in Wilmington anymore. We're in this town called Bear, Delaware. So I'm away from my childhood friends, but I form a new group of friends out there, another good group of friends, and you know things are going well. You know, for the rest of high school, you know, I finished high school with a 3.2 grade point average, you know, and you know, at this point, I was an all-state baseball pitcher. I led my team to the championships a couple years in a row, lost both times, which is ironic. I lost to my dad's old high school both times. So, you know, he rubbed it in. You know, he rubbed it
Yeah, yeah, there had to be a lot of yin and yang there, give and take.
in. Oh, man. Uh, but I'm still playing the guitar. I'm still skateboarding at this point, and everything's kind of going good. I joined a band after high school. And you know, things started taking off faster than we expected. You
As
know,
far as success, yes.
as far as
Okay.
success, like, you know, they started taking off. Uh, we started going to different states, performing songs and stuff. And the bands that we were playing with at the time, they started getting signed to record labels and they started doing really big things. And we were thinking, man, if they're getting signed, then we got to be up next. So we start practicing, we start performing more, and it starts to become an issue, you know, because it starts to become an issue with my stepmom, you know, at this point, because I've graduated high school. I'm in a band. I'm traveling on the weekends, and when I'm not traveling on the weekends, I'm skateboarding with my friends. You know, I'm doing this. I had a little part-time job or whatever, but it wasn't nothing serious, you know. And my stepmom was more focused on, like, what are your plans for your future? You know, like, you're not going to be some, like, rock star. The odds of you making that happen are slim to none. You're not going to be a professional skateboarder, and even if you do become a professional skateboarder, the longevity in that and the wear and tear on your body is only going to be a few years, you know? You excelled in school, you graduated with honors. You were good, you know? But what are your plans moving forward, you know? Like, you have to set up some type of future for yourself. Are you going to enroll in the military? You know, are you going to enroll into a trade school, learn a trade? That's admirable. That's a good thing to do. And I'm like, well, I want to be a professional skateboarder. I want to be a rock star. You know, I'm 18 years old at this
Still
point.
dreaming.
Still dreaming. And I didn't pay it any mind. And I got kind of actually a little resentful towards her. Because I'm like, why are you telling me this?
Sure.
Why is my dad not saying this? You know? And I think it kind of put him between a rock and a hard place.
Of course.
You know? So he kind of like sat back. He didn't say anything. So I continue playing this music. I'm in the band, we're traveling, and then I'm also skateboarding. And this big skateboarding competition is scheduled for this one weekend in Washington, D.C. And I really want to go to this competition. All my friends are going, and I'm like, I asked my dad, and my dad's like, okay. But my stepmom was like, no, you're not. You're not going to this competition. You're gonna stay at home this weekend, and you're gonna actually figure out what direction you want to go with your life. And I'm like, I can figure that out next weekend.
Always.
She's like, no, you can't. You've been saying this, like, you have to figure it out. And I'm like, man, I graduated high school. I'm having fun. I want to go do what I want to do. And she's like, you can't. And I said, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to go do it. She said, if you leave, you are no longer welcome back in my house. And that rubbed me the wrong way, Randy. That rubbed me the wrong way. Your house. It's our house. And as far as I'm concerned, you don't have the authority to kick me out. That should be something that you and my father have to discuss and agree upon. So I paid it no mind. And I left. And I went to that skateboard competition, and I came back, and all my bags were packed. I could not believe that she actually followed through with what she said. More so the fact I couldn't believe that my father allowed it,
Yes.
you know? So I remember walking into that house, and I remember seeing all those bags packed up, lined down the hallway. And she tried to kick me out, and I was like, what did Dad say? And she said, I don't have to speak to your father. I'm the boss. And oh man, my blood was boiling. And I just remember being rebellious. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to pick those bags up. And I'm not going to leave until Dad comes home from work and tells me this himself. She proceeds to kind of like poke the bear. She comes at me, she's poking at me, and she's like, get your bags and get out. And I just remember saying, I kept saying, like, stop. Like, stop pushing me, stop poking me, get away from me. And she wouldn't. And I tried to walk away. She grabbed me by the hair. And I remember I kind of kicked her. I kicked my stepmom. And I immediately knew I was in trouble. You know?
You felt like you had crossed the line at that moment.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I come from a background like I'm a good kid. You know, I don't.
Yes.
I respect my elders. I respect, you know, like she's my stepmom, you know. I didn't talk.
Gotcha.
I never really talked back like that either. And I felt like what I did didn't justify her actions. I didn't deserve to be kicked out over that. And I especially wanted to discuss this with my father, but she wasn't having it. She kind of lost her cool, and then I lost my cool. But once I crossed that line and I kicked her, and she kind of like went through the wall, I I I just I knew it was over. I left. I ran out of fear, and because as nice as my dad was, like, he could put his foot down in certain scenarios, you know?
Bet. You bet.
Yeah. So I ran away. I stayed with a friend for a few days until he came to the house one day. And I was staying in the basement of my friend's house, and then I told my friend what happened. I told him what was going on. And I said, listen, if my dad comes here looking for me, like, tell him I am not here. Tell him you haven't seen me, you know. Well, we're there a few days, and then finally we get this knock on the door. Now I'm peeking through the basement windows, and I'm looking up at the front door, and I can see it's my dad. And I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm like, Andy, it's my dad. Tell him I'm not here. He said, okay. I said, all right. So I'm just sitting there in the basement on the couch, and then all of a sudden I look back, and it's my dad. My dad's coming down the stairs. And I'm like, Andy, what did you do? He's like, I'm sorry, your dad's really big and he's scary. Oh, man. But I just remember having the conversation. You know, he asked me what happened. He hugged me. He didn't hit me. He didn't, like, nothing like that. But he says, you know, like, you really put me between a rock and a hard place right now. And, with what you've done, like, there's no, like, unfortunately, like, I have to side with her on this, you know? So we've talked to your grandparents, and you're going to move back in with your grandparents. And man, that hurt. That hurt so bad. That hurt so bad. That's my best friend, you know? My best friend, my dad. Like, me and him, you know, we were like best friends, you know, my whole life. We did everything together, and he sided with her. So that, I think that really hurt, and that's kind of what like cut me inside, and I didn't even realize it at the time. I didn't. But I knew I felt this emptiness inside from that day forward, and I couldn't figure it out. And a few months after that, I was playing a show with my band, and my friends offered me crack cocaine. And this is the moment that changed my life forever.
That was your first quote, for lack of better, let me rephrase this. That was your first introduction to drugs, was the crack cocaine. Yes, it didn't start with marijuana and this and that. It was, that was where it began.
So, I mean, I had tried marijuana in high school
Okay.
a couple times, like literally a handful of times, if that. It wasn't something that I enjoyed doing.
Got you.
I like to be of sober mind and body. You know,
Got you.
I like
Got
to be
you.
in control of my surroundings. I tried alcohol at a couple parties, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like feeling outside of myself.
Okay.
But when those events took place, and I was feeling that emptiness inside, and I couldn't figure out why, you know, I don't know. I can't tell you other than like it was a perfect storm, because it was a Friday. It was in February, actually. Now that I think about it, it was a Friday in February of 2012. And after I performed this show, my best friends, same friends that I grew up with, spent my whole life with, you know, they offered me crack cocaine. And I remember that first initial thought like shocked me. I'm like, oh my gosh.
The idea of it.
Yeah, I'm like, this is crack. I've heard the stories about crack. I've heard I've watched the movies. I've seen the news. I just didn't know it was in my town. I thought that was something for like out in LA, out in California, but I didn't know it was in my town, and I definitely didn't know it was my best friends. But these were my best friends. I grew up with them. And they had the house, they had the car, they had the girls, they had the jobs, they had everything. So like I found like this tug of war in my mind, like, is it really that bad, or is it something that they just tell you not to do because it's illegal, it's against the law? And my friend just told me, he's like, man, just try it. If you don't like it, you don't have to try it again. And that made sense to me, Randy. Like, that made sense to me.
It would. It would.
I had tried marijuana before. It wasn't my thing. I had tried alcohol before. It wasn't my thing. When I took that first hit of crack, the second those chemicals hit my bloodstream, it was like a switch flipped inside of me. Something changed forever. I could not turn it off. I was immediately addicted. I didn't like progress and like ease my way into this thing. It was like one hit, addicted, and I was off to the races. I remember on the way home that night, I went to the ATM machine, and took out $400. And I just started doing that every single day.
Couldn't get enough.
Couldn't get enough. Now, at this time, I didn't know it at the time, but When I moved back in with my grandparents, my uncle gave me a good job. He gave me a good opportunity. He was the foreman for a big plumbing outfit, and he helped run this plumbing company. So he hired me on as it's called a plumber's helper,
Yes.
and then I was going to train to be an apprentice, you know. But because I was his nephew and I was a good kid, like I said, I was a good kid, you know. Um, he was paying me full plumber's rate.
That would
So
have been good money.
well, it was $38.41 an hour. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was 18 years old, making $38.41 an hour, living with
Connect.
living with my grandparents. I had no expenses, you know. So over, I guess, a few months before that, my friends started getting involved with crack cocaine, and their addiction started growing, and they were figuring, how can we get Joe hooked on drugs so he can support our habits? And I didn't know any of this at the time, you know?
Yes.
So I got hooked on crack, and like I said, it was 0 to 100, pedal to the metal, you know. I went through all my money that I had saved up in my bank account. I ended up losing my job. Um, I'm hiding it from my grandparents. They don't know. They're, like I said, they're old. They're old school. They're traditional. They don't really, nobody in my family has ever struggled with addiction or drug abuse or anything like that, really, you know? Yeah, my uncles may drink heavy on the weekends or whatever, but they all have great jobs. Everybody's very functional. There's no alcoholics or drug addicts in my family, you know? So they didn't really know what to look out for, you know? But I end up losing my job. I end up, you know, pawning all my things. You know, I'm getting rid of all my stuff. And within a few short months, I went from smoking crack to shooting heroin. And it happened like that. It literally
It
happened.
kicked in just as quickly as the crack, the changeover. Yes.
Yes, and here's the thing, Randy. All that stuff that I learned growing up. Be the best that you can be. Do it to the best of your ability. Blah blah. Go practice. I applied those same principles to being a drug addict.
And we're a success, I'm going to guess. Yes.
I don't know if there is such thing as a successful addict,
Yeah.
but
No,
But-
in that moment, that
Yeah.
context, yes.
yes, absolutely. I was going to be the best drug addict there ever was.
Yeah, yeah. You know
And,
what? Right here's a good point for us to take a break. Folks, I've spoken with Joe, and we knew it was going to get to this point to where we're going to make this a two-part episode. We're going to pick up the next episode in a few moments at that time where the heroin is now on your plate, okay? Or in your needle, or whatever the
that
case
monkey's
is.
on my back.
That monkey's on your back. The homelessness and all that leads to. Joe, we've got a song in the background here. We ask you to give us one. Tell us in about 30 seconds, tell us about this song and we'll listen.
This is called In Your Presence, and it's all about seeking the presence of the Lord. It's about seeking His presence and finding rest, you know, within that presence.
The next episode, we're going to talk about rest in that presence, about
Yes,
the
we are.
difference made by Christ. So, folks, come back. For us, it's going to be in a matter of moments. For you, it's going to be next week. We drop a new one every Friday morning. Listen to this song. God bless. Hang in there and tune in for part 2. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
So I don't have to feel alone tonight. I just wanna keep from stressing.